the likeliness that you become president of the United States are higher than the likeliness that you could cast it as James Bond. The process of casting James Bond is very long, very strenuous, very difficult. A lot of thought is put into it. It is not an easy decision at all, and it's based on who is the most talented and the most qualified for the job. Being president is about the replacement for the new James Bond. The search is on after Daniel Craig steps down from the role in 2021 when his character is killed off in the movie. And now, 5 years later, the hunt for his replacement is still happening. Well, in the past, for the past 5 years or so, it's just been whispers and speculations about who would replace him. It's official that now the hunt is on and they are actively scouting a new James Bond now that Dune director Denis Villeneuve has signed on to do the next Bond movie. And every time this conversation comes up, everyone just simply throws out their favorite actor and says who should do it. But there are some serious and real contenders, and one of them is Jacob Elordi. And before this happens, I feel obligated to speak my truth because we all know that this is usually a minimum, 3 to 4 movie deal that spans about a decade. So before something gets done that cannot be undone, I must tell the truth. He cannot be James Bond because his vibe is sinister. It does not matter how much him and his team try to baby girl him, his vibe is sinister. There is a reason why his two most famous roles are Nate Jacob and being Frankenstein's monster. Is because something evil around the corner here lurks. I think Jacob would make a great Bond villain. I think that would be amazing. That would be phenomenal. I think he can make a really dark and twisted villain. But James Bond? I could never picture him as the hero. I couldn't. I would spend the entire movie holding my breath, waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for a twist at the end. Like you guys know, like Kevin Spacey and Usual Suspects. That's what he gives me. I actually think him, and Kevin Spacey have very similar auras, like very similar vibes. If we move past my own personal opinions, we can talk about the practicality of it all and how it doesn't work. Like one thing about James Bond is that he is a spy. He is supposed to be able to move very quickly in and out of places. He is supposed to be able to blend in places. Jacob Elordi is 6'5". Like no, like, do you understand how big 6'5" is? Like, look at what she's standing on. He's 6'5". Something about his body type that just doesn't give, can move quickly, can be kind of slimy, moving in and out of places, can move very gracefully like a dancer. He doesn't, no, look at how big he is. I've seen two James Bond's movie. I've seen A License to Kill, and I've also seen No Time to Die. And those movies are about 30 something, I want to say 32 years apart. And the one thing that stood out to me as someone who watches a lot of old movies is how every time I watch a James Bond's movie or when I watch the new one, how much it felt like a movie that was recorded and written and acted in the 70s. And like film and industry that changes so much and changes so rapidly, like the difference between watching a movie that was set in even just like let's say like the 90s in the 90s versus a movie that came out in maybe 2010 and being able to see these distinct differences in like acting forms, in the way that the film is shot, all of it is just completely different. The thing about like No Time to Die and watching that is that I would argue that the James Bond's movies are like a time capsule. If it wasn't for the shininess and the newness of it, if you were to put a filter on it to make it look older, you could have told me that movie came out in the 70s and I would have believed you because the acting is still very like, I don't know how to describe it. I want to say like maybe like stark the way that it used to be. I feel like the way that acting has evolved, newer acting is a lot more intimate. It's a lot more honest. There's like an uglierness to it. There's more rawness to it. While before it was a lot more dramatic, right? It was very similar to like stage acting, and we can like credit that to like cameras getting better, right? Cameras are better, cameras are crispier, people can see a bunch of details, so actors don't have to act as big. To me, it's not just the acting, it is the way the character himself is written. Like James Bond to me does never feels like a real person. He feels more like an archetype of a person. It's very rehearsed and composed and kind of stoic, right? I think which works really well for a leading man set in like the 60s or the 70s. That makes sense, right? Because they were just making archetypes of people. But I think for a leading man in the 2020s, it doesn't really feel right. If James Bond was written today for the first time ever, he'd be more similar to kind of like Batman, where he'd be more of an anti hero than an actual hero. If this character was written for the first time today, we would see more themes of like mental health issue and depression. We would see things about ageism. We would also see themes discussed of like existentialism. Again, I've only seen the two that I'm talking about, but if you would like, if it'll make you feel better, I can watch some more of them. Let me know if you want me to, and I can see if I see any more depth being discussed. The point of bringing that up about the character is that James Bond's as a character and the entire franchise itself feels more like a time capsule. It feels more like an homage to the golden age of Hollywood than it does more like a contribution to art. For everyone asking and kind of wishing for a more progressive James Bond, right? Like hoping like a man of color does it. I saw other people being like, it'd be interesting if a woman does it, right? I think that would call for the franchise to evolve, and I just don't think that it wants to. At this point in time, James Bond represents what the ideal man would be, right? Which is that he's powerful, he is strong, he is quiet, he is kind of emotionless, right? He can solve a problem without having any kind of real problems of his own. Suave, he's cool under pressure. I think he is the wet dream of what the average man sees himself like, and I think making him human kind of dissolves that idea. I think moving towards diversity is kind of admitting that the image of what we consider a man has changed and has evolved, and this franchise doesn't want to do that, neither do its fans.